So I say we begin today's topic with a question, a few questions actually. I assume that we are all familiar with the classic Asian family gathering, right? Like one feast with lots of relatives coming over. And to add on to that, who gets really annoyed when a child just start nagging their parents for their phones or their tablets after the meal to play some games or watch some YouTube? If you said yes to most of those questions, then I think you'll be intimately familiar with the situation I'm about to describe. So the other month, I was at my uncle's birthday, just after the meal, brainstorming topics for TEDxCNN Youth. And as expected, my niece came up to my uncle and started begging him for his phone to play some games after the meal because it was so boring. And internally, I went, you guys need that to be entertained. Back when I was your age, I would just go outside and monologue for a half hour. It sounds autistic, and I probably am, but I digressed. But and then another question came. What are you? Addicts? But then it kind of hit me. What were they addicted to? This? Well, that would be too simple of an answer, and my TEDxCNN topic had to be way more complicated, way more pretentious so I could pose as a smart person. So I got to digging, and what I realized is that the term iPad kids don't just refer to these Gen Z, Gen Alphas who are glued to their phone screens, scrolling TikTok 24/7 and watching the next brain rot animal, or rather, it is an umbrella term that refers to a collective condition, an underlying addiction that affects everyone, even you watching this recording right now. It is an addiction to fake feelings and pleasure and stimulation. We are all addicted to some form of consumerism, of substance abuse, commodities, alcohol. Have you ever bought a piece of clothing only to feel dissatisfied and going back to the store to buy another one? How about, ever tried binge eating, binge watching a movie, or playing games, doom scrolling for hours on end just to distract yourself from some kind of work, procrastinate? Have you read a book in recent years? Me? Oh, I haven't read an actual book in like a year. Well, I assume that most of you can relate to that sentiment, at least from what I've seen online. But does this sound alarming enough? It doesn't. So let's elaborate a bit more on this. So, a brief history lesson. Imagine this. Stone Ages, scary times where TikTok and Subway Surfers didn't exist. What could humans possibly do in such a hellscape to keep themselves distracted from life in general? Well, we didn't have that kind of luxury. We had this thing to do called surviving, or as the ancient wisdom have it, ooga booga. And to accomplish this grand mission of ooga booging, we had to invent a way to do it effectively. The first idea that came to mind was killing and plundering, but that didn't really work. And imagine the allegations on Twitter now if I just went outside and shot a man for his food. So by the 16th century, we have developed this new method of getting food in our mouth called capitalism. And it was kind of a small thing, just a small idea. Oh, of course I am joking. It was an instant hit, a banger. It was so big that every country, every human being, every living organism got involved in the scheme. Like the average online person obsessing over the album Brat the moment it released, myself included. And fast forward to now, capitalism is everywhere, in your clothing, in my food, and the stuff I'm using to present this speech is a product made for and by capitalism, made by profit and made for profit. Or not, depends on you, then your purpose. But how did it get this big? What was the foundation that allowed just an idea of a mode of production to get this prevalent in our lives to a point that is easier to imagine the world ending than capitalism ending? To the point that our society, our reality relies on capitalism? Well, to put it simply, it relies on a cycle, a fundamental cycle. But to explain the cycle properly, I would have to go into 3 hours worth of discussion. So let's use a music analogy for this. And this is definitely not an excuse for me to start nerding about my music taste. So before a disclaimer, this is about the album Brat. And if you haven't listened to that, I highly recommend giving it a try. It's a great album. But I want to focus on one song in particular that relates to this speech a lot. It's called Everything is Romantic. At first, the song speaks of the sights and beauties that Charlie XCX encountered on her trip to Italy. Capri the Distance, Jesus Christ on a Plastic Sign, something something leather tan shoes. I can't remember the lyrics correctly. And of course, it's all good and dandy like that. However, there's this one quote in the song that I feel it just hits off. It does hit, it bangs, but it hits like in the weird spot, not an itch. It's called Fall in Love Again and Again. This is the exact cycle that I'm talking about. If before we derived our happiness from appreciating the finer things in life, the beauty of nature, of the cities of Italy, of the beaches, of the sunset, and overcoming our obstacles, becoming a happier person and more mature, now in a post-industrialized capitalist society, this quote becomes a command. You have to fall in love again and again. Before our process of getting to happiness involves so much hardship, so much time and effort, trial and error, but they are commodified, sold to us via forms of pills, of substances, condensed feelings in instant gratification. We resort to things like TikTok and YouTube Shorts instead of going through the motions of falling in love with somebody for real, opening up, getting an emotional connection. We turn to AI chatbots when we feel lonely instead of having to experience being vulnerable. Why go through the work of learning a recipe, processing the ingredients, and seasoning, trial and error with the recipe to perfect it when you can order a burger from McDonald's? Let's zoom in on that burger real quick. Absolutely succulent, devour-worthy burger. But, is it really just a burger? Or is it not a chemically altered product made to be as addictive as possible, so you have to come back to it over and over again? Is TikTok just a place to talk, to socialize? Or is it an algorithm fine-tuned to ensure the maximum extraction of information and pleasure from its users? Our economy doesn't just run on money, not just on the dollar. It runs on currency of stimulation and pleasure. We see these things in TikTok, YouTube Shorts, fast fashion. They exist to lull us into puppets, mindless people that devote our time, our energy, and our livelihoods to corporate overlords. And now we cease to enjoy anything. Few of us can put away time for reading a book, meditating, being alone with our thoughts. Actually, let's give that a try, shall we? What would happen if I sat here for 30 seconds, a minute, an hour? How long could you bear it? Would you be mad? Would you go through withdrawals? Would you itch for your phone and scroll while you wait for it to end? Would you ask the organizers to skip through this part of the video? But that just proves my point. How many agonizing moments would you allow yourself to be still? So, now that everyone's attention that was previously scrolling or on their phones are properly back on me, probably, let's dive into this cycle. Because if you've just experienced that brief period of silence and felt alarmed, then you must want to know how it works. Because somehow this cycle has pulled us into becoming addicts without our knowledge, without our intention. Well, actually, give me a few moments. I need something to drink real quick. It's actually a bit hot, and I'm thirsty right now. Good old Coke. I've got to admit, I'm hopelessly addicted to this stuff. I can down 2-3 bottles in one sitting. I was allowed to, not regarding the diabetes, but Coke is not without its important philosophical lessons. In a short movie, The Perfect Guide to Ideology, the philosopher Slavoj Žižek calls Coke the perfect commodity, because it serves as the ultimate example to demonstrate the relation between commodities and our desires and how they function with each other. In capitalism, we are compelled to enjoy. We see this in the slogan of Coke. Coke, enjoy. In capitalism as well, when you're not enjoying, then you're not doing it right. Maybe not enough Coke. Not the right flavor, not with the right people at the right time. Have you tried having Coke at a movie night? With friends even? Or with chips? I heard that's good on the internet. But there's something off about Coke, even despite all that. Let's talk about what I wanted when I got the Coke. I was thirsty. That part is simple. But if I was just thirsty, why did I not get a bottle of water? Why, when it comes to drinks in my head, Coke is so much superior to water? There's something in this Coke, independent of its material qualities, that make it superior, more appealing to water in my head. I guess it was all the advertisements of the fun times I have with my friends, movie nights, game nights, or just binge watching a Saul Goodman on Netflix. Or it's that sweet fizzy punch that hits my taste buds like a dopamine hit after I scroll through TikTok for the 30th hour. But the fundamental desire, my thirst when I got this Coke, was never quenched. The paradox of Coke is that the more you drink, the thirstier you get. I'm never wholly satisfied. And such is the case with every other commodities in our economy. We look towards these commodities to fill up that empty gap inside us, that desire, that void, but they never do. So we come back to buy them again, rinse and repeat. It's like a cycle. It mimics that of addiction. And you can scroll through TikTok, YouTube Shorts. You can play games for hours on end without ever feeling satisfied, without ever feeling that it's enough. You must want more, must do more. We look towards advertisements, beer for friend hangouts, Coke for enjoyment, fashion for expressing yourself in the proper way, and we are lulled into believing that having these things, having this, will make us fulfilled, will make us happy. It will fill up our desires within. But they never do. Because if they did, what will be left of the economy? And the consequences of that are dire. We can never enjoy anything before capitalism. Music, art, nature, literature, they don't generate enough stimulation in a short time, so they are disregarded, leaving room for instant gratification, for condensed feelings in short amount of times. We are left with an unfulfilling life, chasing happiness through the means that the market provides us through dopamine hits, only to be deprived, denied, and colonized by corporations. Let that sink in for a bit. So now we're unhappy. We consume, but can never be fulfilled. What could we do now? Well, dear viewers, I'm not completely confident that I have a solution, but I do know of a remedy, a way to let yourself adapt to this society, this dystopia of ours that serves to colonize our feelings. It starts with a sob story. So, just February, around late February this year, I broke off with my first love. It was a beautiful, absolutely amazing relationship, just completely flushed down the drain. And of course I was devastated, like any lovesick boy I would. And I even joked with my friends about how I was coping with this distress by consuming things and capitalism. I went around Sword Lake, Westlake, trying out all the high-end cafes, the expensive French bakeries, buying merchandise, fashion that I would have never bought prior to that. I went home and started junk eating late into the night just to forget about the fact that I was no longer in love, that they were no longer in love with me. I even blasted music on max volume just to ensure that I wouldn't give myself a second to think about my own emotions. But those nights, those days where I go outside and indulge myself in these things, I would go home and try to write them down in a notebook, in a journal. But nothing would come to mind. All that instant gratification, all that good feeling I had buying those things, enjoying them, they are just gone, replaced by an empty, hollow void, meaningless. I guess I haven't consumed enough, I thought. There were more bakeries in Hanoi, I'm sure, more cafes, more stuff that I haven't bought that were sure to make me happy. And I did it again. For the next month, a few weeks after that, whatever, consuming, indulging myself, trying to see if I was fulfilled. Nothing. It was still the same empty, hollow feeling. But late March, I did something different one night. I went home and, I noticed that it was an emotional breakdown. One that I usually warded off with Charlie XCX music blasted at the max volume. But for that night, I did something very unusual for me. I locked my doors, sat at my table, and put out my notebook, began writing, began journaling. No music, and I wrote about my sorrow, my grief. the things that I felt after the breakup and my fears for the future, while also letting myself cry to mourn for the loss I felt. It hurt, definitely, a lot more than those 2 months combined altogether. But it was also the first time that I allowed myself to be true to my own feelings, to my own sorrow and grief. And from then on, I never felt the need to distract myself from the breakup with those self-indulgent tendencies. No more bakeries, no more cafes, no more merchandise, whatever. The breakup sits in the back of my head like a parasite, of course. It saps away at my mental energy. But this pain is true. It is something that I know resonates with me. And I can work my way into becoming happy through working through this pain. There's happiness at the end of this path, but not the one I was self-indulge. And that, dear viewers, is what I implore you to do as well. You have to identify what it is that you truly want, your true desires and your true heart. When we see these advertisements, do not get lulled into believing that having these products will make you happier, because happiness can only be found within. Before you pull out your phone to scroll, take 1 minute to think that what you're trying to achieve with this scrolling. If you're lonely, find a friend to talk to. Don't doom scroll. If you're tired, take a nap. And if you're sad, maybe you can write it down like me, or listen to a song that makes you happy. Whatever it is, you must identify it with yourself. We deserve to be human beings that are happy with our own capabilities. We deserve to fall in love again and again with our own hearts. When capitalism gives you a list of products to choose from, I ask that you choose yourself first and foremost. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.